Hi, thank you for joining me with Anton Seals of Grow Greater Englewood, South Shore Works. The list goes on. For this episode of the Public Narrative Podcast with Jhmira. Welcome, Anton.
Well, thank you for having me.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a hot day in Chicago.
Yeah. One of those interim days where it was just cold a few days ago. And now here we go, almost 80, 90 degrees.
Chicago at its best.
Absolutely.
Can't get his act together.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Anton Seals Jr., proud Chicago Southside kid from South Shore. Families from all over the damn city. Mm-hmm. I am a community brother at large. I believe in the service and betterment of African people. Mm-hmm. Connected to a larger diaspora. And, I am a father, a husband, a friend, and a comrade. I'm all of those things. So sometimes I'm leading, sometimes I'm following. Mm-hmm. That's kind of me in a nutshell. Yeah. I am a triple Aquarian with a Taurus moon. So that kind of, I ain't taking no sorts, but I'm, very kind-hearted.
I hear that. We actually connected. I reached out to a colleague and friend, looking for folks who, knew the history of South Shore, really interested in figuring out how public narrative can make an impact. And Sylvia Ewing actually connected
Mama Sylvie.
us. Yes, she connected us. So just talk a little bit about the roots of your work. What got you started in public service? Did you aim to be, such a trusted leader in the community?
Did I aim for that? No, but I would say that I am a son of. Mm-hmm. So I am proudly my daddy's son. Yeah. I am Anton Seals Jr. So I always make sure, because there is a senior. Yeah. And my mom and my dad both poured into me. Mm-hmm. And so my dad did this work. He served in the community. He served this community that we're sitting in now, Woodlawn, for many years as the vice president of TWO. Okay. He coached at High Park. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into public service. My grandmother on my mother's side was part of the True Squad mothers that helped desegregate Chicago public schools back in the 60s, the early 60s, before Dr. King came.
Wow, yeah.
So the beginning part of, before there was a TWO and Breadbasket. Mm-hmm. So big shout out to Maddie Postel and the Evans clan from Grenada, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So, I am that young, old person. I used to sit at the feet of all of the folks who was born at the end of last century, early part of the century. Yeah. My first name is Lawrence. I'm named after my great-grandfather from Louisiana. So we have roots in Ninth Ward, part of the Nola family, deep down there. Treme, all that. So all of that, Oklahoma roots, the King family. So I am part of that storytelling is so vital for me as just who I have become in my family. And what I was just interested in. I'm the question man. So often I'm sometimes being questioned when I'm often want to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm wondering where did you, and perhaps even at what age, did you really lean into the power of the stories that the elders shared with you?
Probably really early on. Just being inquisitive. I want to say, that's a good question. When exactly did I catch a fire? When did I really know? I would say probably, early on in elementary school. I went to a Catholic elementary school for 8 years, St. Philip Neri. A big influence there was Miss Selma Newton, who grounded us in history. And then I was just around culture, the mamas and the babbas early on. So Kwanzaa was never, this has always been a part of the backdrop of my upbringing. Even though it wasn't in my house, it was part of that larger community within South Shore. Yeah. So we were always around intellects and people who grounded us in making sure that we knew that our context didn't just start in the Americas. Yeah. Right? And that we were part of a much larger story and that this was a protracted struggle. And, that leadership isn't some kind of like flashy thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, that's powerful, and it really gives you the ability to like help people change their lives and transform their lives according to what you know. Correct. So how were you like? It sounds like you were really a leader among your peers. Even like, what was that? What was that like?
Well, I never and still don't necessarily always just see myself as a leader. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes people, the connotation for black men or black people in our community is like, who's the leader?
Yeah.
You know, the Messiah kind of piece. Yeah. And what I always push is that there's also, you know, there's leaders and there has to be followers. Mm-hmm. And that dynamic between leaders and followers, like who has the power. Mm-hmm. So I'm much more interested in interrogating these notions that we have of what it means to be leaders. That, you know, does leader always mean that you are out front or that you make the decision? Right. You know, what does leadership really look like? Right. Sometimes leadership shows up when it needs to. Mm-hmm. That's what leadership is meant to me. Like when there's an opportunity to show up to be of service. Mm-hmm. There's times when, you know, leadership means you putting your foot down. Yeah. You know, so it becomes kind of much more dynamic than just like the leader is X, at least in terms of like my interpretation of it around being a servant leader. Totally. So I've kind of definitely shied away from like, look how important I am. Mm-hmm. Look what I'm doing, because I don't think it's about Anton. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's about what we can leave behind, and I'm doing my part, right? Mm-hmm. And we all have to do a part. So I always looked at that because, like, my dad and his peers, some who people know their names, and many of the people who made the magic happen, they don't know their name. Mm-hmm. But there was just power in that. There's power in that. Totally. They don't know Godfather. They don't know Donald Crumble. Yeah. From what they call Old Block now.
But even more so, those individuals didn't need to be known in order to feel like somebody.
No. Yeah. But they are essential to, you know, it's the nameless and the faceless that have power. Yeah. Right, that we often forget about. It's the Maddie Butlers, you know. It's all of these folks in my mind. It's the Lonnies. I can go on. It's the Teresas. Like now and Woodlawn, I'm gonna call their name. Yeah. Because I knew these individuals who gave of their time, their intellect, their resource to try to make something better. Yeah. And oftentimes we forget about those because we can look to somebody. Exactly. And I get that. You know what I mean? Because that's the way human nature works. But I think that there's the power in like making sure to always be much more self-reflective around, you know, the attention. And just because I'm also not, you know, I'm full in other ways, so I don't need that sort of attention from people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because my identity is not based on that. Yeah. Because I got a family. I'm a barber. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I got a bunch of Watoto's godchildren that love me. Yeah. So I have other purposes, you know, and interests. So I think I always keep that to keep me balanced. You know what I mean? Because we've moved into a world that is much more around, let me show you. You know,
we can talk about that.
It's a much more, and it's some people play to it very well because that's their person. Because it takes all kinds of people to make the world go around. Totally. You know what I mean? So there has to be room for that. I think that that's just not the only way that we can define who's effective, who's impactful, who's a leader. Exactly. You know what I mean? That there are all these other ways. And I think that's, you know, my story. Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you witnessed it firsthand. I did.
And, you know, and the power that you can behold in that. And ultimately, like, how are you using that to shape the world around you?
That's a good question.
Because you are a very busy man.
You know, I stayed curious over the years. I'm one of the guys. You know, I got a whole, you know, cruise of folks. You know, from the East Side, from, you know, my family there. They hold me down, but I've always had a mission. Like, that's your role. You go out there, you represent in that way. But I think I just spent my time in trying to, you know, find things that I found interesting. You know what I mean? Yeah. Things that inspire me, that can inspire others. Yeah. So, you know, South Shore I love is home. Englewood I love is home. You know what I mean? My mom lived there for many years. My beloved stepfather, Smitty, who I shout out. Yeah. My family, the Seals family, is from 5610 South Princeton. My grandparents met at Englewood High School, graduated with Lorraine Hansberry. So there's just a history there around, those were just jazzy people to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And they was, just regular, ordinary, but extraordinary people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what we each hold in our families, those people in our lives,
Totally.
right? So I always try to find something that leaves a deposit of like, is this something that can improve our conditions? Especially now as I'm starting to get older, you start to see like time is, we only here but a spell.
Indeed.
We're sitting in a community that 70 years ago, they was throwing bricks through the front window when the black people moved in.
Yeah.
That the whole segregation cases were made and broken from the history that are on these streets in Woodlawn and Westwood.
But what really challenges me is like there are people like you and others who know of that, and then there are others who walk these streets every day with no clue of the history that they're standing on.
Yeah, I mean, but it was talking. You're always gonna have that dynamic of people who are interested, and where you first learn is your families.
Yeah.
So I think the tool of what this is doing is making sure families tell the history, both the good and the bad,
Totally.
The triumphs and the tragedies, because in that there's a sense of healing that I think can come to our communities. You know what I mean? To our families, because that's what makes up the communities, our families.
Totally.
And there's been a lot of harm, right? A lot of scattering, but we're in that interesting period. So that's why I'm trying to build spaces, work on spaces that attract to harness what we have, the assets that we have. You know what I mean? It ain't all for naught.
Exactly.
People ain't all killing each other out there.
Exactly.
That's not our, master narrative.
Totally.
But there is the seduction that is our master narrative because of the different tools that are now employed.
Exactly.
So we repeat stuff, we share stuff that is not always true.
Yeah. That's what I appreciate about your platform. You are leveraging, I can't even keep up with all the circles you're a part of, so you can definitely inform us. But you are connected to various different circles, all doing very important work in their respective communities, but it sounds like all of it is rooted in this collective power and being able to really be establish camaraderie.
That's right.
Be cordial, be decent and civil among each other, and then share ideas and ultimately share resources.
That's what it's all about. And then, it takes all type of people to make the world go around in my mind. You got all kind of people, but what we have to establish is that I sometimes damn, I am involved in so much. How the hell? And part of it is you just get involved.
Yeah.
So people see titles and they're like, I've just been involved to be of service.
Exactly.
Right? Not necessarily. And when I was younger, I didn't have a mission to be I'm going to be, I used to fret over that. Oh man, I'm not a single track kind of I'm going there. I was I'm interested over here. And I'm interested in that.
You didn't know then you were a trailblazer.
I didn't, and then and shy away from that kind of let me just be me. So I had a great friend and mentor, Naomi Walker, who, oh, you may know that, Just how
Blacks and Green, right?
No, that's Naomi Davis. That's my TT. That's TT. That's Nay. Her and Miss P. I love them. Big shout out to the Auntie Squad. They are exuberant and have big ideas. Take no shorts. I love them. And a lot of people but I love them. And everyone don't always see, but there's a love there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And a respect for those women. Because there's a lot of women. There's a lot of brothers too that are throwing down, that are doing just amazing stuff. So, what keeps me grounded in thinking about this is I was reminded early on, you don't have to be one way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? Because I just learned that then.
I had to learn because I felt like, in your early. So this is interesting because like people are like, oh, he doing all like how you, and it's like I'm not quite sure how I could give you the blueprint.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't like, well, if I do that, then I'll meet this person, and then this person.
Yeah.
I ain't calculating like that.
Nah.
And I ain't never.
But you were passionate, and
I'm passionate,
right?
But I'm not one of them people like I don't give a damn about your party. Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm be outside parking lot pimping. That's me. That's always been who I've been around, and like that's how we roll. Mm-hmm. So that motif still comes with kind of like okay. You know what I mean? Like, no, okay. All right.
We doing this.
We doing this today. All right. So I'm a big shit talker too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
we need those.
You need those to be like, and it's done out of like, you know what I mean? Because people think sometimes I'm so serious, but people who know me know that I'm that kid in class that was like, we're gonna be talking shit back here. But I'm gonna finish my work. So, you know what I'm saying? So, and I went to Hyde Park. I went to St. Ignatius. Got kicked out. Landed at Hyde Park, the school that I grew up in.
What year did you graduate?
92.
Okay.
Yep.
My cousins graduated in 96. I think my brother graduated in 97.
So my little brothers graduated in 96, 97. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary. But what I learned there, I had a great mentor, teacher, Miss Linda Murray. I say to the ancestors who just passed. She was a sociology teacher there. Larry Hawkins, Coach Griff. There were so many people who were there who wanted to make sure Miss O'Banion. I'm just thinking of like, so how teachers play a critical role in seeing you.
Yes.
Not how you actually see you.
Yes.
Right? And at 17, 18, when you are like a renegade, and then all the people I was kind of around who are now, who in actuality saved my, and I didn't realize it at that time, you know what I mean? But it was a network of queens, basically. You know what I mean? Who were like, man, what are you doing? Who loved on me, you know what I mean? And it was platonic, you know what I mean? It was like, what are you doing? You smart. What are you doing? And I'm just like, I'm angry.
Yeah.
Because my parents are separating, they're having a divorce. I got expelled from school. I don't know which way I'm smoking weed on a regular basis. I'm ditching school. I'm taking Mondays and Fridays off like I got a career. You know what I mean? Like, and then I demo and I'm like, oh wow, I can't stay here. But with that time I was so focused on hanging out. Yeah. And it was a host and I hung out. Going on like house parties, staying out 2, 3 on the L all over the city, on the north partying. I had a ball.
A blast, I know it.
It was a ball.
I know.
Like that whole 88 to 90, that was a time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I had that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wouldn't, in retrospect, give it away because it's like I was able, and then I have my lifelong friends from that. And everybody is doing amazing work. Similar work, you know what I mean? Leading institutions. Yeah. But it's like from where you come. So like the next generation is coming, and I said, well, I want to be a leader. It's like, I want to help them out. I'm not going to make you do a gauntlet. You know what I mean? I can only share the wisdom that you want to be able to consume. Exactly.
I'm wondering, you mentioned a lot of the elders and just paying homage to them, even those that have passed on. You may, I don't know if you saw how influential they were to your life at the time they were pouring into you. Did you at that time?
Oh yeah, certain ones for sure. Like I'm just thinking about Mama Pat Hill. That was our girl. Yeah. Yeah, she loved on us. Yeah. She was on, she was a firebrand, but she was like, y'all got it. Get y'all ass up.
Yeah, exactly.
So that energy, some of the elders are still here. You know what I mean? And just thinking about like what they were at that point trying to share with us. Even within my own family, I just lost my great uncle, who was the last of the Seals of that generation of that was my grandfather's oldest brother. Yeah. Like he was the end of the 5 children that Pop Seals had. with Granny Goldie, and to hear the stories, because that family, we weren't close, because my dad wasn't close to his dad. So these are the kind of things like, because it's some hood shit. Right? That's like, and people forget, like, my dad ain't from the hood. They from the lakefront. They from Ida B. Wells. They from like 12 different neighborhoods. Because my daddy then was broke. But people think, oh, they got to... Oh, you don't know people's story.
And then the connectivity is nothing like what we see
but now the young people, like, they lead with, like, my shit was all fucked up. You know what I mean? It's like, that's always been the case. That don't have anything to do with how you treat people.
Exactly. And
how you treat yourself. That's right.
Yeah, in our families, we learned that.
Boy did not mean they're synonymous with being dirty or foul. But what's been pumped back in culture over since our lifetime, I think. And, you know, hip hop has played a role in that. The messaging, like, they resold what it meant to be in the hood. And I was like, that. I ain't yet to see a hood flick that was like, the hood ain't never looked like it was always much more dynamic than just like, you know, the welfare check ain't come in.
Exactly. Because those stories don't focus on the characters, which are the people that you're talking about, who are staples in the community that really held us down.
That's right.
You know, and my family too, from around 50th and Princeton, 50th and Shields.
Down the street.
Yeah, relatives graduated from DuSable High School. Just listening to their stories and experiences, though I wasn't there, I learned a lot of lessons the wisdom within those stories helped to, like, really, you know, champion or even lead you into your future in a way that you don't know that they're going to until you're in certain situations. So, like, based on what you've learned and gleaned from the elders, what are you hoping that young people glean from you?
To pass it on, to keep it going. Don't hold on to it. That the magic don't belong to just you. You know. Your
life exemplifies that.
You know, don't hold on to magic. You're gonna make mistakes. You human. Your shit stink too. Don't be overly pious. You know what I mean? There's a lot of lessons. You know what I mean? Trust your gut. You know, stay away from you know, bad energy. You know, and it may end up turning into good energy. But let the winds and the waves do what it need to do.
Totally.
Right? And I guess the other thing is that I would love to, you know, is that sometimes it is hard. Sometimes you don't always know all the answers. And that's okay too. Because you're going to go through different seasons.
Totally.
Right? And sometimes you will be strong and sometimes you will feel weak.
Totally.
And that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. That's why we are in community.
Exactly. No, that's so good.
You know?
Those are all character building lessons as well.
That is. So, like, I'm working with a intergenerational group of people who are dynamic that make up Grow Greater Englewood. And it's the honor of, like, I couldn't have dreamt this up.
Talk a little more about Grow Greater Englewood.
Well, it was first started as a coalition. So Sonia Harper and myself. Sonia was leading. She's the mother of Grow Greater Englewood. She's now a state rep. And we were like making like we should do some pool. Some, you know, it was like GUA was the Greater Englewood Gardeners Association. We're like, we need to make sure that black folks are. If we asking for an urban ag zone, we're not going to have all these white folks coming over here talking about we're going to do some urban farming. And you talking to black people, like, well, come on now. Like, that's what we're like. Does that even make sense? Like, I'm going to come teach you how to, like, you finna come teach me.
Exactly. But listen at that, though. Even what you're talking about, it's like you, with this idea, you figured out how not to let gentrification.
And we got to continue to learn the lessons, because in America it's based on, like, then we got to, you know, unpack that big piece around gentrification as a, you know, real estate, as a system. You know what I mean? But it's also the racism is embedded in gentrification, because, you know, and then define who are the gentry. You know, that well, the history of who the gentry class, like where that whole European structure comes from. Is the gentry were trying to be closer to the king and the crown. Right? So they weren't necessarily royalty or the aristocrats. They were the gentry.
Yeah.
So all these things have a history. And sometimes, like when we think about gentrification, how we define it in the modern sense is around how community would improve.
Right.
But that is so attached to racial politics.
Yes.
Right? Because when a community improves, that means white people come.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's implicit in when we say we need to improve the community. Both white and black people know that. White people know that because they're taking advantage of the real estate market where they're able to buy low and get value out of what they're able to buy cheap.
The equity, yep.
Right? And for those of us who know, we like, and that's what we got. That's what I'm teaching.
To stand on.
You got to stand on. Like, who is you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all that patriot talk that the white, all the right wing. Who is like you run up on the wrong black like we'll read to the rights.
Exactly.
Like you need the back, stand down.
Exactly.
Because we was here before you.
But that's rooted.
Kind of thing.
Even as that evolves, like it's like that's because oftentimes some black people are underestimated.
Oh, for sure, and even by ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
And that's just the history in this country because of chattel slavery, of enslavement of people, and then the ongoing onslaught of a system being used to undermine your achievement. Right?
Yeah.
Like we're gonna go out of our way.
Yeah.
To create things in a system that makes it difficult for you to be on par, quote unquote. And that's the mythology and that's what whiteness is. So oftentimes we talk about it, but whiteness is the ability, because these aren't, things that were created as systems in the modern sense.
Exactly.
Right? So then we start peeling that back. It's like, but these are things like, what are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Just because you're white didn't mean that you automatically have money.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But what's happened over the years is that there's been built in that, like, at least you are not, it's a caste system. Right? But America whiteness is about not believing. It's the ability to not hold truth as a function. Right? It's just like, let's remember January 6th as a whole other thing.
Yes.
And if we continue to say the lie,
oh my goodness,
we can believe the lie.
Let me tell you something.
So it's like the Klan didn't exist. They weren't a threat to us. They were just good, God-fearing people.
Let me tell you something. We know that every story has some sort of purpose. It has some sort of result, some sort of consequence. Like there's some sort of impact to be delivered by the stories that are told. When we begin to tell stories that advocate for people who are harmed by the systems in this country, there's an abuse of right and left. There's an abuse of political status. There's an abuse of classism. There's an abuse of elitism. I attended a conference that was held by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And the Chicago Police Department. So all of the attendees were either chiefs of police from across the country and their community counterpart also present. Public Narrative was invited on behalf of Chicago. So it was myself and a retired police officer by the name of Vanessa Wesley. Oh,
that's my sister.
I knew you was gonna know her.
That's my sister.
I knew you was gonna know her. Y'all know everybody. Vanessa they invited myself on behalf of Public
Talk about
Narrative.
a trailblazer.
Let me tell you something. We go to this conference and they had us, it was only 3 days. They had us the first day go to the African American Smithsonian. We toured those floors and I was so blown away by the history that as much as I love information, I did not know half of what was shared in those halls. That system, going back to the system, it was built that way. It was created that way to keep us away from our history and our understanding. There's another woman, Dr. Joy DeGruy. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Dr. DeGruy. Her study on post-traumatic slave syndrome and just talking about how each ethnicity has its role and its place in humanity. What I'm getting around to is we don't focus on humanity. the humane thing, we know what is right. We know what is wrong. We know that if this happened to someone who was not Black or someone who was not Hispanic, we know that a different story would be told as opposed to how it's told for our communities and holding our communities down. How are you leaning into storytelling to shift some of those narratives, and even shifting the way that Blacks see themselves when it comes to community and urban gardening? Like, what does that look like for the way that you lean into storytelling?
Well, I think one is to be able to tell the story. How did Africans even end up here? Mm-hmm. Right. So often the story around enslavement is around labor. Mm-hmm. It is also around knowledge. Mm-hmm. It was a transfer of knowledge. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. That's why the Europeans went to West Africa. Mm-hmm. Because they knew that those folks who were in West Africa could tend the fields that they had, because the indigenous, they were killing off. Mm-hmm. Right? So they didn't have the modern science. This is the invention of modern science around like diseases, communicable diseases that they were bringing to foreign lands. Mm-hmm. Right? So the history is often looked at from, I think when we talk about Black people or the Black diaspora, or African diaspora, indigenous people, like their voices had to be muted in order for this other thing to rise. Right? And so, and for us to kind of get to a reckoning, a new promise in our country, there is that's what we're going through now. There's still a resistance to having that reckoning, because it would have meant that the lives that they've been holding, right, around that they've been able to achieve because they've been working hard. That is these singular narratives, like I just work hard and then I'm able to succeed. If you do that, you can, right? And then that's usually what is trumpeted. But it's much more dynamic than that, right? And we've got to be able to hold space for all of those different narratives, and that's really hard to do.
I'm going to tell you, Vanessa holds space in such a way. I've seen her in different environments, but this one that I'm talking about with IACP, this was the first time I'd ever been among Black, white, brown people who first built a rapport among each other. And I was sitting across from a white guy who said, now mind you, everybody's been to this museum, who says on our last day, he apologized on behalf of what his people did to Black and brown people. And I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house. I had never heard that. Yeah. But to your point about being able to uphold the truth, there is not the willingness. And I'm not saying that everybody have to go around apologizing for what their people, but just acknowledge the fact that what stories you hold on to are stories that were passed down to you, projected onto you. You believe them to be true. We're learning, and we know now they were not. They caused harm and listen, own it.
There's also a level of disruption, because we're talking about at a master narrative, because when you get down to like humanity, like, because that's not how real people actually. Yeah. People have always been white people, Black in America, intermingling to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
In cities, you know what I mean? Yeah. So sometimes, yes, to that major narrative, but there are tons of folks who's like, that's always been crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? That's always been like, well, I don't think like that. Yeah. I know plenty of white folks like that. Like, I don't, that's kind of crazy to me.
Exactly.
Right? So that narrative doesn't exist either. And, you know, like what makes up the blues?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What made rock and roll?
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? That's down on 12th Street in Jewtown, as they would say. Where you had ethnic Poles, Southern Blacks, Lithuanians, Czechoslovakians, Puerto Ricans, all coming together through another language. Right? So there's all these kind of the meta narratives, and then all these other things that trickle from that too.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So that's what's so interesting around the narrative. Like, so how do we push beyond? You know, how do we slice through to even defy our own assumptions?
Yeah, I think we're in that space though.
For sure.
Though we might not have, like you said earlier, like we might not have the blueprint, but I think in years to come, we're going to look back and see, well, this is how we did that. And this is how we navigated that. And I think that's why there's so much resistance still, because we're in a place now where Black and brown people are collaborating, connecting in ways, leveraging resources as we always have.
It is, Natalie Moore, who I grew up with, she was like, we might look back at this time and this was a renaissance. Mm-hmm. And it's the juxtaposition of that renaissance against this narrative of decay and violence.
Yes. Yes.
Right? These parallel universes.
Oh my goodness.
That, at the same time we're saying that Black excellence and achievement across the spectrum, from those who are from the Theasters and Emmanuel Pratts to the Guion Formans and Paula Robinsons and Phil Beckhams and Darnells and I can go South and West Side.
Totally.
Right? Black Chicago.
Transforming the
cities. And then you have a whole Latino community transforming the city. Right? And then you so there's a lot of how do you hold, and what is that narrative?
Yeah.
And these things are happening now at the same time.
That's
right?
So
because
powerful.
it's you can't take this away to this is not over this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because somebody is getting shot and killed right now.
Exactly.
And unfortunately in our city, what's happened with violence, and this is the one thing I would say, first of all, we need to stop saying it's gang violence.
Totally.
If they get the public there can do anything
let's lean into
ain't nobody going to service and getting blessed.
Yeah.
Stop. This is interpersonal violence with a lot of young people who are pissed off, who may be a little do because their parents was a little do. I always look at it I came out of Hyde Park in 1992. Our senior year, I don't know, when it was around this time in May, every weekend, 5 people murdered. And some kind of way we have forgotten. That's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
At least 15 people was murdered in our class. It was a bunch. Every week you come back damn, they did. No counselors. It became normalized.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
And now we're the grandparents.
Totally.
My generation have now got the grandbabies out here. So I'm looking at day level of what the family structure even looks like for the next generation. Mama got to work. Doing the best they can, but who's standing in the gap with the babies?
Totally.
What's their environment saying to the children? These are things that now are shaping our young people. So now, as as a middle age, the tales of the middle age, you start to see some of the wisdom of what C. Dolores Tucker was talking about. When we were saying she needs to shut her old ass up, be quiet, mom.
But now you understand.
Oh, they got us.
Yeah.
Because now our kids out here stringing murder music.
Yeah.
And popping pills.
Yeah.
You 10.
Yeah.
Your life is that messed up at 10.
Exactly.
So I love how Baba Phil Karan talked about the spells of music. Because of who we are as ancients. Right? As African, in your blood is the ancients.
Yeah.
And you can feel the beat. The beat still moves the people.
Now you sound like James Brown. Go ahead.
The beat still moves the people. It's informing the people. It is a language that is unspoken. Yeah. That people will nod their head to. You feel it, and as it's the natural knitting for Africans across the the way we see each other when we hit each other with a groove. Right. That grounds us to something that we can't really explain. Yeah. Because it doesn't need to be explained. Yeah. It's understood. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that's when you could go to Belize, or you could go to Guyana, or you could go
and connect with the beat.
You can go to Berlin, and you see the Congolese and wherever we are. Right? And there's a recognition for that. And I think that has been used, by those who are in the industry to cast spells. Right?
Totally.
And so it's more metaphysical. I'm damn, but it is the songs are spells. Yeah. Yeah. The words that you're saying, it's like a spell that I'm now believing what you say.
It's all spiritual.
I am engulfing your truth. And it could be all bullshit. Right? So I'm we have to interrupt that.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And part of that dynamic is really tough because what the young people who are rising from these communities are I made it out. Right? Especially a lot of the young rappers, the drill music rappers, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? And if I'm able to give back. But there's a dichotomy because their music is still being enjoyed, right? It speaks to young people, but it speaks to a pain only in young people.
And not a liberation.
And not about liberation. Totally. And we don't even have the language because they can't even rap about that and make money.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Artists like Nina Simone and Marvin Gaye, like they spoke to the healing of a lot of what we, I'm saying we, like I was around, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That we were seeing around that time, but we don't have very many of those artists. And what few we do have, they aren't listened to by younger generations. Like it's more.
They're not pop music.
Yeah.
That's what I'm like. The industry that's putting them out finds value in that image. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
Because it is appealing to the masses, which are white consumers. Right? Being fueled by telling the stories of Black Death. So Black Death has always been part of entertainment.
Totally.
So that's the kind of stuff that we are trying to lean into to break. Around our liberation in this country. Like, that's a problem.
Totally.
Right? So there's this dichotomy that we're living in, like all of us trying to, revive our communities. And there's a sickness in the community.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, how do those two things, come together? Is there an acknowledgement that's even the case?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is it just like that's, it's a real interesting thing because all the folks who have risen from Chicago, they're all selling the toughness of, toughness is the motto.
Totally.
Totally.
How can people connect with you in your work? Because this is an incredible conversation, which I know is informed by the experiences you've had and how you pour yourself into your work. How can folks connect with you?
That's a good question. Give them
your Instagram or
I try to use social media. I'm a photographer, but I'm not even like sharing as much as I used to on Instagram. But Grow Greater Englewood is probably the organization you can probably follow us with, embarking on. If you live in Englewood, no family in Englewood, West Englewood, the Englewood Nature Trail is a huge project. We are looking at our driving question is, what does it mean to create Black spaces? You know what I mean? And to me, they should be reflective of the vibrancy and the beauty and the fortitude and all of the things that make up us in these community. Yeah. Right? And not broken glass and wine bottles everywhere. Yes. That's part of it. Yes. But that ain't it.
That ain't all of it.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? So where's all the tulips and there is a so more of that, connecting that. So you can definitely follow growgreater.org. Very proud of work we're doing in South Shore Works, Planning and Preservation Coalition, the work that we're doing at Woods to help support many of the groups that are putting their bodies and their time on the line to create change. So Woods Fund, big up to Woods Fund and Black Roots Alliance. I'm a part of their work. Chicago Food Policy Action Council. Shifting the narrative so that we can have resources and develop real local economies around food. National Black Food Justice Alliance. I love the national network. It's a lot of us here in Illinois, Black Oaks and Baba Fred and Dr. J. There's so many of us in community. Erica Allen. So I see myself as always being, my nickname in community is Demolson. Okay. And Demolson is like aloe vera. I'm the cool, I'm the binder, the cool.
You're the bomb, yeah.
I'm the bomb.
I love that.
I try to keep everything. That would be accurate because I'm the, trying to bring people together. Yeah. And sometimes, when fire happens, you have to be able to use water. Right. You know what I mean? You don't fight fire with fire. As Fred said, you have to fight it with water. So people have to understand that we are in a protracted struggle for our liberation. And that there are all these different kinds of approaches that have to be, like a colony that are what I see coming together. Yeah. Right? And so I'm appreciative of all of it. There's just so many dynamic young people elders, not only in Chicago, but across the country. So, stay encouraged. You know what I mean? Dig even deeper.
Yeah.
And, lastly, I think, is, let us not forget that, this too shall pass.
Totally.
So this is a time and a spell that we're in, and we'll be in another one. And we're going to be all right. At the end of the day, we're going to be all right because we come from a place.
Yes.
Totally.
And
I'm going to leave it there because, I got to get into people's spirituality or religion, but we come from a place.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And we will return to a place.
Absolutely.
And then you can put your own definition on that.
Well, I love the value that you've added to this conversation. You have truly added value to all the groups you made mention of. Please check them out on social media. Look for ways to get engaged, stay connected. I am your host, Jhmira Alexander. This is the Public Narrative Podcast. And Anton, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.